On today's show, we talk about music as a means for understanding, visit with Quincy College's Dean of Nursing, enjoy a spoken word performance from America's hometown laureates, and talk about upcoming things to do in our South Shore towns. I'm Elizabeth. Let's get started. Restaurants, museums, art galleries, local shopping, music and theater, and our beautiful waterfront. There's so much to see and experience in and around downtown Plymouth, and See Plymouth is making it easier to get around. Their popular Ride Circuit electric car initiative is back for the season, and once again is completely free. The fleet of 2 GEM cars are joined by a Tesla, which will take passengers on direct trips to Plymouth Patuxent museums and the Plymouth and Brockton bus stop behind the Mass Visitor Information Center. This on-demand shuttle service initiative is funded by the Plymouth Visitor Services Board, aiming to reduce traffic congestion and make traveling around America's hometown more accessible. As a bonus, all cars are operated by knowledgeable driver ambassadors who are happy to offer local tips and recommendations. General hours of operation are from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m., but for a full schedule, visit cplymouth.com. Providing nursing students with the clinical skills and expertise to give high-quality patient care in any medical setting, Quincy College's nursing program is a valued South Shore resource. Dean of Nursing Diane Gillis sat down with Tiff Phillips to discuss the program, her background, and the future of healthcare.
All right, I'm with Dean Diane Gillis. Thank you so much for coming in today. It's great to have you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So we're going to talk about the nursing program at Quincy College. But first, I want to get to know you a little bit. How did you find yourself Dean of Nursing?
Well, it was an interesting journey. I have worked for years in acute care in the Boston hospitals, which is where I grew up, and have been in education for a number of years. And at one point continued my education to get my doctorate and decided I needed to cut back from a full-time opportunity, and started at Quincy College working out in the clinical environment with students, which was wonderful because it brought me back to why I became a nurse back in 2017. And after a semester of that, an assistant dean opportunity became available, and I was asked if I was interested, and I proceeded into that role, and then to the associate dean role, and then 2.5 years ago assumed the deanship at Quincy College for the Division of Nursing.
That's amazing. Did you know from a young age you wanted to go into the medical field?
Actually, I didn't. When I graduated from high school, at that time it was either teaching or nursing, and I chose nursing. And my parents expected me to be home within 2 weeks. They didn't think I would survive, but here I am, and I love my choice of career.
That's great. So now we're going to talk about Quincy College. So can you tell us a bit about the nursing program?
Yes. So Quincy College has 2 campuses, one in Quincy Center, but also one here in Plymouth in Cottage Park. And we offer 2 programs. We offer a 2-year Associate of Science degree in nursing program, and we offer a 10-month or 40-week Certificate in Practical Nursing program.
Oh, nice. So when did that program start? Have you guys always done nursing?
Well, Quincy College historically has had a nursing program. However, these programs are newly developed and started in the fall of 2019.
Great. Is it relatively easy to find job placement after graduating from the program?
Well, right now the opportunities are immense because we're amidst a nursing shortage that somewhat was jump-started as a result of the pandemic. We did anticipate a nursing shortage occurring in the future, but as a result of the pandemic, many nurses, baby boomers particularly, left the profession, as well as others that just chose for various reasons as a result of their experience in the pandemic time, that it was there were other opportunities, or they moved out of the acute care environment into non-acute other nursing jobs. So we are amidst a significant nursing shortage, which is opening the doors, particularly for the licensed practical nurse, as well as the registered nurse.
So across the board, right, there are shortages, not like private practice, hospitals, that kind of thing.
Across the board, and particularly in, for example, a community such as Plymouth, the further out you go from the Boston area hospitals, the shortage is more acute.
That's hard, but I'm happy that you can find a job. That's the hardest part, I think, of going to school is, you study for however many years and then you get out, and I'm like, that's happened to me too. I went into communications and I couldn't find a job after, so I'm so happy for these folks who could actually find job placement. That's amazing. In the post-pandemic times, there might be some hesitation about becoming a nurse. I mean, there's kind of a lot to be worried about. What do you think the benefits are?
For being a nurse?
Yes.
Well, I go back to the core of why many nurses have chosen nursing as a profession, and it's their interest in caring for others. That hasn't changed. What has changed is the environment, and I expect that that's going to continue to change. And when I talk about the environment, it's the work-life balance needs. Most individuals now are looking for more flexibility. Salaries certainly economically are driving some to decide to go into the nursing profession, but ultimately it's the desire to care for others.
In your own specific career, did you ever get a moment where you were like, this is why I signed up for this? What brings you joy in this profession?
Well, early in my career, caring for others was certainly what drove me, but then I developed an interest as I became more experienced in mentoring other nurses. And so that led me down the path to become a nurse educator. However, when I came to Quincy College and went out into the clinical field with practical nursing students and RN students, it renewed my satisfaction with the profession because it brought me back to the bedside, and I was mentoring novice caregivers, and to see them grow from their first day when their anxiety level is high and they're not sure what to do, what to say, where to go, and how to function, and mentoring them through and seeing them at the end of the experience being able to provide care in a very skilled way and in a very knowledgeable way is tremendously satisfying. So the opportunities in nursing are endless, not just my experience in the nurse education mentoring experience, but there are so many routes that a nurse can take. Many nurses are going into their own private practices as well. You can continue your education and become a nurse practitioner and work aside providers, and there's a provider shortage as well in primary care, or you can go into leadership roles, you can stay at the bedside, you can work in home care, ambulatory, hospital settings, and there are many other opportunities as well.
So why should people choose Quincy College for nursing, you think?
Well, for a lot of reasons. First of all, we're accessible. We are affordable. The return on investment in terms of the Quincy College tuition base is great. In a very short time post-graduation, economically, you've regained what you invested. And we have a very diverse student population on both campuses. And as a result, our faculty are passionate, flexible about what they do, and we work with the students so that whatever the situation is, and the pandemic really brought that to light for us. We experienced things we may not have anticipated we would have to experience, and that has continued on since the initial 2020 pandemic emergency, to the effect that I think we've become much more agile in working with students to help them create the balance for their personal life and school life, because the nursing program is rigorous no matter what program you choose. But our goal is to support students to get them through, and I think at Quincy College we do a great job of that.
So this last question's a little bit loaded because no one can really see into the future, but what do you think the future holds for healthcare in general?
Well, right now, there is a lot of concern about the nursing shortage, as well as shortages in other areas of healthcare. And I believe the opportunity is for those of us as leaders to look at new opportunities, like how do we transition from where we've been, where current state, and the future? Because if we don't look at it from a futuristic standpoint and look at options, flexibility, ways to encourage the workforce to consider healthcare as a career, the crisis isn't going to be resolved quickly. And I don't think the crisis we're in right now will resolve quickly. I think it's going to take some time, but it's going to take innovation and true leadership to guide us through what we're experiencing. And Quincy College can play a role. We feel our role is enrollment of students to become nurses so that we're feeding the pipeline. We have other programs as well, such as the Certified Nursing Assistant outside of the nursing division. That is a first start into a nursing career. So we're looking at it from a continuum. And we have several programs, Surge Tech, Physical Therapy Assistant, and nursing, as well as the CNA program, phlebotomy, medical lab tech, that can all help feed that pipeline.
Sounds like Quincy College is going to be on the forefront of helping us out through the long haul.
That's our goal.
Diane, thank you so much for your insight. It was so great having you here today. Thank you for coming in.
You're welcome. For more information on Quincy College, visit quincycollege.edu. Triad is a nationally recognized program comprised of law enforcement, older adults, and senior services working together to reduce senior victimization and to unify and implement the resources, programs, and services that are currently available in their community. As part of this initiative, the Kingston Council on Aging invites you to What You Need to Know About Emergency Medical Response in Kingston. On June 27th at 11:30 a.m., meet with Captain Dave Currier of the Kingston Fire Department to learn about what to expect if you ever need to call 911, crisis situations, and how to prepare for them. For questions, call the COA at 781-585-0512. Soundcheck Studios in Pembroke is hosting Concert for a Cure, a fundraising event to benefit the Pan Mass Challenge. On June 24th from 7 to 11:30 p.m., enjoy opening act Stevie Burke as he sets the stage for popular local band Bluefish. Tickets include food, music, and fun with a cash bar on site. The Pan Mass Challenge is an annual bike-a-thon fundraiser with 100% of proceeds going directly to the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, a world leader in adult and pediatric cancer treatment and research. For more tickets and information, visit the Benefits Eventbrite page. Longtime educators, musicians, and friends, Reggie Harris and Alastair Mook have created something special: activism and education through music. We went on the local scene to learn more.
That's the million-dollar question. Well, it started long before the actual meeting. The story goes that I, back in the 1980s or early 90s, got booked to come and play in Fairfield, Connecticut, by Alistair's mother-in-law. And so 2 weeks in Fairfield, and I met his wife, Jane, when she was, I think, 10 years old. And we became family friends, and for years and years and years, watching Jane grow up and being friends of the family. And then Jane went off to college and met Alistair and brought him home and decided to marry him after we all passed judgment. And then so Alistair and I met, and he became a musician, and we've shared a friendship for over 25 years.
but we didn't talk much about what we talk about in this program, and that's kind of a key piece of it. We had a warm and polite friendship. We didn't get into this, what we do in this program, which is talking about race, and interracial conversations about race are rare and hard in America. And, you know, we both had to get to a point where we were willing to dig into that together. I had a lot of learning to do. I reached out to Reggie as I was doing some work with other peers of color in music. And so reached out to him, and this was after George Floyd was murdered, with some specific thoughts and questions about how we could work in the folk music realm. And at that point, we started to dig in, and as we talked more and more, it started to seem like there was a conversation here that we could model for other audiences about how to have conversations about these hard things.
Well, the first thing I said to Alistair when we began talking was, I'm not doing a collaboration. I'm busy, I'm tired, I have enough to do. And he said, fine, fine. But the more we talked and the more we dove in, the more it seemed not only possible, but it seemed really important. We have a real synergy with each other. And, you know, the friendship aspect really matters, but also with the way where we are in the country and the world right now. I loved Alistair's ability to cut through to the core, and at the same time we share this real love of roots music and music in general. So slowly but surely we began to see a window for using the music to get to things, really things that came out of what we were both already doing in our separate shows.
And I think Reggie and I both feel like the importance of getting this work out there is the primary thing. But every collaboration is very different. And Reggie and I think, have something very special. We have a shared vocabulary, musical and a sort of shorthand for talking about these things. And the show has evolved a lot in the few years we've been doing it now. For one thing, I got a lot more comfortable. I was very passive early on, and I would ask Reggie questions, and it was more directive. There was a point where Reggie really kind of empowered me and said, especially when we work with kids, they need to hear from you. They need to hear your point of view, your lived experience. And he said something that really opened things up for me, which was, there are things that you can say as a white performer that white audiences will hear that they don't hear from me. And of course, the opposite is also true. But at that point, I think our program took on a new level of real collaboration, where we lift this weight together. And I think that the sum is greater than the parts, because it is so unusual to see people be willing to have these conversations in an open and honest way. And then music is the honey, you know, that's what we use to open each other up and open the audience up. And I think it's a really important tool. It's one approach to how to have these conversations in a way that is inviting and draws people in rather than pushing them away.
I think I love the fact that both of us have found ways to be very honest and very open, without being threatening and brutal. And at the same time, I think we exhibit a trust in our willingness to risk. I love that moment when, you know, we begin a program, regardless of the age, and you can feel the tension in the audience, kind of where they're going to go with this, and we just tell them we're going to go there, and I think the music is really one of the keys. Well, I think the level of difficulty partly is related to how much work a person has done. The thing I really appreciated about Alistair was that even though for 25 years of a friendship we didn't have these conversations, he wasn't just sitting around and not thinking about these things. And he came with a lot of information and a lot of thoughts that he had already processed, and he'd already been having conversations with other performers and other people in the field. Um, I was at the time having a lot of conversations with a lot of people who were kind of racism 101. And, I've committed to that mission, but it is very tiring. I couldn't work with somebody, obviously, that is on that level. But Alistair came in ready to go, and yeah, he's learned and evolved, but he's also stretched me on a number of issues. And I love the fact that we also just don't stop with race. One of the things that I think is a key difference in the work that I do with others is that we really talk about oppression and prejudice across the board. And I think that gives an access to people, because you never know who's in your audience and how much that can speak to them. And I think that it's never, ever, ever a small thing that a black man and a white man of different ages and different backgrounds are standing there together, plunging into this material and obviously enjoying working with each other.
There are a lot of reasons why this is so hard to talk about in America. One of the starting reasons, though, there's a fundamental difference between practice. Black and brown Americans talk about race all the time with other Black and brown Americans because it's a necessary part of daily life. To be aware of your skin in a majority white country. And one of the privileges of whiteness is not having to talk about race. So most of us don't practice that. We don't learn how to have the conversations, and then we're wrapped with all sorts of fear about if I say the wrong thing, and a lot of that fear has been heightened in some ways. So people have kind of different approaches to this. Some people sort of come in like a bull in a china shop. And then a lot of white folks, I think, are very, very nervous and skittish and resist talking, but also more importantly, or equally importantly, resist getting involved in the work of actually changing things in our country because of this fear of making mistakes. But it requires a lot of self-work, I think. And it's one of the things I learned early on. And I was lucky enough to have some mentors besides Reggie. Dan Zanes is a musician, a white musician who's done a lot of focused anti-racism work for many years. And the conversations he and I had several years ago were really formative for me. And one of the things that he really helped me see is that to dig into this work, you have to do work on yourself. It's not a thing in a bubble. It changes you. As men of any race, we don't learn very well how to make mistakes, how to be wrong. So learning to be wrong was a big thing for me, and to be okay with that and to sit with it and not go to the place that we so often want to go, which is to get defensive.
I think one of the other differences, between the two communities is that, we as people of color have been dealing with this for centuries. We understand that you take on the work because it's going to be ongoing. I find that a lot of white people come to this and they want to take it on, they want to solve it and get it over with. And they want it healed and they want it done. And I tell audiences all the time, when you sign on here or when you take this on, you're in. And it's a muscle that you're consistently working and building up. But if you're going to expect that this is going to be over, just look at history. And look around us, look at the world. We are still dealing with some of the primary issues, and this is one of the things that we deal with in our presentation, the history of it. It's been a long struggle, and it will be a long struggle. So this idea that we're going to do a few things, have a couple of conversations, and then it's all going to magically disappear is not only unrealistic, but it's very damaging. It's very wearying to the heart. In addition to everything else, we're performers and entertainers. So it's important to have people have a good experience of the show. We're not going to be batting people over the head and taking them through a painful experience. And in the midst of having some fun, in the midst of feeling uncomfortable at times, we will try to create an atmosphere where people can hear and experience and feel some very real feelings. And I think often our audiences discover that this experience is something, while hard, while difficult, is also something in which there's a lot of joy.
We also, I think, both approach this in a way of invitation, and the music and the warmth and the humor, like all of that is about pulling people in and inviting them into this space. So in terms of our audiences, we've had great experiences across the board. And I think audiences are self-selecting. There are people who absolutely don't want to have these conversations or witness them or be part of them, who've, put their foot down and said that they're colorblind, right? This is one of the great expressions in America. I don't see color, which only white people can choose to do. Those folks don't come to our shows. Sometimes I see comments, threads on advertisements for shows of people saying, "Why do we need that stuff?" But they don't show up, because to show up would require them being willing to challenge themselves, and I don't think they are. So the folks that come from a lot of different backgrounds and spaces and are in different places in their own journey about thinking about this, but the fact of showing up we take as a sign of being interested in learning and participating. So we welcome people in.
And I love the fact that, we hear people come up after and they say, "Wow, I learned something." And it's like, that's not the worst thing in the world. You never tire of people telling you that something has really impacted them, and, the stories. But I love those moments where parents come up with a younger child who obviously has said to them, "I want to go talk to the performer," or "I want to go tell them I enjoyed the show," and then they get there and they can't get the words out, and the parent is kind of trying to coach them, and you just see in their face that the relationship has been established. They feel a level of trust, and they finally get out whatever, or maybe they're just really so excited they just plunge right in. But yeah, I think I watch after shows, and I'll be in one place with people around me, and Alistair will be in another place with people around him, and I think we hear the same things, that people are so happy they came, and then they want to share some part of the show that really meant something to them.
Yeah, when we do school shows, especially, two things stand out for me. We hear a lot from teachers afterwards who come up and say, "Thank you for talking about this." And I think it's such an essential part of what we do, that the sense that we're visitors, we're tourists when we go to school, we're in and out. It's the teachers that do the work, right? And so, especially in those settings, I think Reggie and I see ourselves as planting seeds, but it's up to the school to nurture that and continue the conversation. So it's really meaningful to see teachers embrace it. And we're living in such fraught times. The backlash to talking about race has been so strong, and in some parts of the country, this is absolutely not possible to do what we do. But even around here, teachers feel this fear. There are vocal minorities, even in liberal towns around Massachusetts, of people who come and talk to school boards about critical race theory, which is nonsense and has nothing to do with what Reggie and I do in our programs. But that fear that comes with it is real. And we've done it in New Hampshire now, in schools in New Hampshire where they've passed one of these anti-CRT rules. So the stakes can be high, and it's meaningful to hear from teachers and administrators that they value this, and that they're brave enough to take it on. The other thing that stands out for me is, in the suburbs close to Boston, a lot of towns that are majority white have the historical Metco program, where families from Boston almost entirely Black and brown, choose to send kids to suburban schools. And it's fraught. It's a complicated dynamic. Um, People make this voluntary choice, but they're also sending their kids to a foreign place. And it's scary to know what happens in those places. And, Reggie has lived experiences as a kid that he talks about in the show, about growing up in Philadelphia and going off to a majority white school. But also just it's rare enough for kids to see a Black performer on stage. And sometimes I see kids come up, Black kids who just want to sort of make a connection. I see you. I'm glad you're here. And it's
Hmm. Yeah, just the proximity. And I remember one show recently, I think we were in New Hampshire, and we had the whole student body stand up and sing We Shall Overcome. And as we plunged into a question and answer after that one, I think seventh or eighth grader, she said, you're talking about all of this stuff in the civil rights movement, and singing that song made me feel what they must have felt. And for a young person of that age in an auditorium full of their peers to be willing to actually voice that was a very powerful moment. Sometimes, you're really working with peer pressure, and obviously kids are not really willing to sort of step out, or they laugh and they feel uncomfortable with how they can express themselves, trying to encourage their friends to laugh along with them. Uh, but I think the surprise that they're feeling something from these stories is a new experience, and it's one that I feel very good about our ability to produce that kind of atmosphere.
I've learned so much personally from Reggie, but also together. I think we've learned a lot how to do this work.
Hmm.
And I do think it's important that we both feel like we can take this out into the world and continue it, because this is, to Reggie's earlier point, this is long haul stuff. And part of our work as growing elders in the field is to plant some seeds among our younger musician peers too, and hope that they'll continue this kind of public work going forward.
Over the course of years, I've probably because of experience and also age, I've become a pretty fearless guy with being willing to step out. But this work with Alistair has taught me something about a different kind of fearlessness, and I really appreciate how this work has stretched me, and how it also has, as he talked earlier about having language, how it has helped me in some ways to develop my language and develop the approach that I use. So even when I'm not with him, there's a palpable difference that I can see in my own performances. Bernice Johnson Reagan, person who started Sweet Honey in the Rock, she said music makes things possible that seem impossible. Because of the way it resonates in the body, because of the way it shifts the mental thinking process, because of the voices, hearing people singing around you, music creates an atmosphere, an opportunity for people. That's why in the civil rights movement, people, before they had big meetings, they would gather every night in a church and they would sing for a couple of hours. It makes it possible to discharge emotions of stress. It does so many good things for you, and then you put the words in there, and you have this expression, self-expression, and also a community expression. So music is a perfect vehicle for opening the door or window to creating a possibility for change.
It's unifying, it's primal and it's unifying. You go to a lecture or a panel conversation or something along these lines, and it can be really powerful, but everyone's sort of sitting in their siloed place, thinking, maybe considering what they're going to say next. Music's an opportunity to stop thinking for a few minutes and to be together in something. It's ancient, it's ritualistic, right? And it was so central to those early Southern years of the civil rights movement that because we talk a lot about history, to exclude that piece of it would, to me, that's part of how we honor the history of the people who were brave enough to go before us to push these conversations into the nation, right? And King and Fannie Lou Hamer and John Lewis, they used music. They believed in music and the power of it. We rarely leave much on the table, do we? We can talk
No,
ourselves blue.
I think we've pretty much said. I know I've said pretty much everything I feel like I need to say, but I'm just uh, grateful for the opportunity. To tell you the truth, I started as a musician, hoping, like so many people, that I would someday become rich and famous and run around the world saying, "Look at me! Look at me! Look at me!" I am so grateful for the fact that it didn't happen the way I saw it. And for all the things that I've been through, I am, to be able to, meet and work with Alistair and to work with the other folks that we know who are all in this community um, is so affirming and such a powerful rush because we're all different and we all have different stories. And that is what we can encourage in those that we meet, that your story is important. Your experiences are important in the building of a better world. And to do something, anything that might unleash that in somebody in our audience is a great privilege.
I can't top that.
Good.
But he's the best out there doing this work. So getting to do it with him, that's my great privilege with this program.
To learn more about race and song, visit openingdoorsproject.net. The Duxbury Art Complex Museum invites you and your littles to the June 22nd program, Stories and Art for Children. Geared toward children ages 4 and up, this 10 a.m. program will feature story time by the Duxbury Free Library and a fun art project offered by the museum. A perfect morning out. Register via the Duxbury Free Library website. Summer means it's time for Pride again. The Plymouth Pride Festival is back. On June 25th, color yourself in rainbows and head to Nelson Park for a day of celebration, solidarity, community, and of course, pride. The third annual event will feature performers, food trucks, and unique vendors throughout the day. And the pop-up on the local scene street team will be there too, so stop by, say hi, or step up to the mic to talk about what Pride means to you. For more information, visit the Plymouth Pride website or find them on Facebook. The summer surf and sun call us, but spending a few minutes with a book each day prevents the summer slides and reaps benefits of both learning and pleasure. This year, the Pembroke Public Library's theme for summer reading is Find Your Voice and challenges readers of all ages to participate beginning on June 20th through workshops, programs, reading, and exploring digital challenges through the Beanstack platform available through the Pembroke Public Library. Sign-ups are available in person or on the library's website. Next up is poet Miriam O'Neill in a reading of her original work.
Our next poet tonight is someone I had the pleasure to meet a few years ago, and I've been following her career ever since. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to know this woman. Miriam O'Neill has published 3 collections of poetry and numerous book reviews. Her collection, The Body Dialogues from Lilly Poetry Book Review Books, was nominated for a Massachusetts Art of the Book Award in 2021. She hosts the monthly reading series Poetry, the Art of Words at Books and Sundry at the Plymouth Waterfront. Miriam O'Neill, please.
Hello. Thank you for putting this together, Hometown Laureate Committee. And I'm so glad to be part of this. So I have a handful of poems. Most of them have to do with birds. Birds follow me, haunt me, interest me, teach me. My new book has a bird on the front. So, but I want to start with a poem that came from the night of the Plymouth Poet Laureate finalist reading in February of 2020, just before the world shut down. We had a wonderful time. We had 90-something people in the library, in the Phalo room. It was great. And we sold a lot of books, the people who read. So this is a poem written to the woman in the white sweater who hugged me. I'm sorry, I've lost your name, which I asked for in all sincerity. It was a hectic night, books to sign, friends to greet, the headiness of applause fresh in my bloodstream. And there you were, the look in your eyes telling me something had happened to you in that room. Was it the thought of going free like the birds in my last poem? Some childhood memory shaken from its nest to pirouette in winter flannels? I'm still thinking of your embrace, the way you stayed close longer than the others, shorter than I am, gazing up. Your white sweater, its neckline of ribbon rosebuds like a pillowcase pinned on a line in winter sunlight. Thank you. I know I said that at least, when you leaned against my chest and said, I loved, but didn't finish. My mother sometimes did the same, left words unsaid. And now for a bunch of birds. It's a little tiny poem. Imagine what tree tells owl early in the morning as light opens its mouth and begins its meal of night. This is a totally different kind of bird. I'm old enough to, actually, I was young enough to remember the 60s, but old enough to have been there. Shuffling the late 60s. They were the years of coronets and violins, the sounds of triumph and nostalgia, spigots of tears, frantic flames, the way we enveloped each day of body counts and bodies burning and brutal beatings before our eyes, and they called it news, and we called it shame. And Nina's 88 keys were rifle shots some didn't know how to hear. And the suits were pale blue, as if that made the sellout unreal, man, as if caring was a commodity in a futures market. Oh, yes, it was. If you've seen the documentary about Nina Simone at the Summer of Woodstock, but in New York City. So I have just three more poems. I forgot to check that. A radiance of shadow. 5 a.m. 8 crows converge on roof's rim and scuffle hoe the wooden gutter, thumping so hard I imagine a pair of stout raccoons up on the shingles. Out in my robe to investigate, they disperse. The split rail fence, the spruce, the yellowwood all fill with squawking until by ones and twos they wing away. All night, all week at night, you have stood beside the dead under the gaze of others and pronounced the time of death. Grief, a harvest of wild berries on your tongue, you taste in sleep, that inky sweetness of fruit picked too soon or late. When my brother left, a radiance of shadow bloomed from his dying. That night I lay awake, my breath and pulse a chant inside my body. Just the same, just the same, just the same. We had jostled around his bed, taking turns, whispering names in his ears of loved ones, traveled with him as far as our living would permit. Then the quiet of him gone spilled us back to day, and we scattered to our tasks, eyes brilliant with witness. Like crows at dawn, we manage each new loss, forage in our guttered grief, then fly on. And I have two small poems. Icarus had a son, in case you didn't know that, the legend. I mean, if there's going to be a legend, there may as well be, generations in the legend. Icarus's unclaimed son has questions. What did it mean to fly when no one could? What was there to fear that we aren't wise enough to fear now? Where was he going, and who with? Why did my grandfather insist on the sky? Why was I not in the plan? When I find a white feather afloat on the Aegean, I remember that I cannot remember him. And so I'd like to end with this poem. I told you I love birds. Birds have different names. We know about the murder of crows. Did you know that a flock of turkeys is called a rafter? And finches, a group of finches is called a charm or a chirm. This is called the charm. This noon, finches claim the feeder. Muddy scarlet house and golds in their winter drab. They flick away the titmice and juncos who lurk in the privet, gray on buff or black on gray, who must dart for seeds while the finches chaff their fill. I used to wait for him on my perch, hope he'd choose me, though I didn't know how a boy decided. And no one bothered to explain I was unnerving, my bookishness a charm of words that made most boys flounder. The years have passed and that bird's flown, 2 wives wedded and left, and fledglings spun in nests of promises then discarded. And I, settled as a stone, unwinged, what should I do with this happiness? Thank you.
Helping your LGBTQIA+ teen connect to community is an important way to provide them with the tools needed to navigate their identity and build relationships with people who understand them. On June 24th at 2:30 p.m., the Duxbury Free Library is hosting an LGBTQIA+ meetup for teens aged 12 through 18. Snacks will be provided for this casual, no registration required meetup when your teen can make crafts, view LGBTQIA+ themed displays, and connect with others. Learn more on the Duxbury Free Library website. Inebriart, in collaboration with Mayflower Brewing, brings you a fun Saturday treat. The Mayflower Summer Shop Local Marketplace is back. On June 25th from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., shop local vendors for unique items, munch on local and delicious food, and indulge in a craft beer or two, all while enjoying the warm summer sun. Visit the Inebriart Facebook page for more details. Earthworms are important agriculturalists. They improve soil fertility and structure, leaving nutrient-rich casts in their tunnels that help plants' roots grow. On June 27th, kids aged 5 and up are invited to the Plymouth Public Library Manomet Branch program, Hands on Nature, Incredible Earthworms. In this 1-hour interactive presentation, kids will learn about the exciting world of these simple invertebrates, including the earthworm's anatomy, their vital role in the environment, and learning about decomposing and recycling soil. They'll observe live earthworms under magnifiers and build their own mini worm farms. For materials to make the farm, parents are asked to bring a quart-sized glass from your recycling bin. Visit the Plymouth Public Library website to register. Head to City Arena in Pembroke for the always popular Crat Fair and Touch a Truck event on June 10th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Hosted by Treasures of Our Hearts and benefiting Alice's House, there will be a large array of trucks for kids to touch, play, and sit in. After you're all trucked out, browse the local vendor Crat Fair to treat yourself to a little something. Email treasuresofourhearts2@gmail.com for more information. And that's what's good and good to know on the local scene this week. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Thank you for watching. We are grateful for your attention. If you like what you saw, please like and subscribe to the local scene here and share everywhere. Thank you, friends.